The story begins and we see the protagonist Laura. She is in her apartment and her roommate Irina is having a gathering party with some important people. They talk about books and play games. Laura goes to her room to finish packing when her roommate comes in and asks whether everything's okay. Throughout the party, Laura is quiet and dissociative, but she tells her roommate that everything's fine. They are in a secret relationship, so Irina shows affection when they can't be seen. She starts kissing her and asks to introduce Laura to her former teacher, to which Laura agrees and says she'll be there shortly. Laura's trip to Murmansk is about visiting the petroglyphs there, as we see when she opens a book about them. She joins her roommate and gets introduced to Irina's professor as her Finnish friend. Irina tells the professor about the purpose of Laura's trip and he is impressed. Laura doesn't want to be the only one in the spotlight, so she mentions Irina's obsession with petroglyphs as well. Irina smiles and says that she isn't the only one, to which Laura agrees and says she's excited about the trip. One of the people sitting at the table asks Laura whether she studies archaeology, and she says that she isn't but would love to. Laura came to the country to study the language, but she met Irina, and that fell out of the picture. The man at the table says that it is important to know where we came from, as it is easier to understand the present when we know the past. These words stick to Laura as she agrees with the man. Glass clinking can be heard and we see Irina in the middle of the room. She raises a toast to Laura and praises her for her bravery. Everyone cheers in Laura's name and Irina takes a picture of her. After setting the camera down, Irina asks Laura to dance and they do, as big smiles are plastered on their faces. Laura lies awake late in the night as it looks like something is bothering her. Irina wakes up and we find out why Laura's upset. She apologizes for not being able to go to Murmansk with her and Laura says that it's okay as she heads to the balcony to smoke. The next morning, we see Laura on the train watching the tracks as the train starts moving. She gets to her compartment and puts all of her stuff away as the guy that's staying with her checks her out. After a while, they are asked for their passports and Laura struggles to find hers, but she finds it in the end. She watches as the guy pulls out alcohol and starts drinking it in the middle of the day. Laura spends the rest of her day sitting in the restaurant as she doesn't feel comfortable being around the guy in her compartment. Unfortunately, the restaurant closes, so she has nowhere to go but her compartment. When she gets back, she sees that the guy is drunk, so she decides to ignore him. She gets on her bed but he asks her repeatedly to come down and film the snowstorm that's outside. Laura finally gives in and sits across from the guy. He starts blabbering and gets political about how Russia is the best country in the world. Laura tells him that she is from Finland and he asks her how they say hello in Finnish. The guy starts laughing once he learns that hello and goodbye are similar in the Finnish language. He asks Laura how they say I love you in Finnish and she tells him heistä vidu, which is the complete opposite of it and means piss off. The fun innocent drunken dialogue ends once the guy asks her whether she's a prostitute. Laura exits the compartment once the guy tries to and asks the train attendant whether she can sleep in another compartment. She says that she doesn't have a choice and even declines bribery money. Laura goes to the lower class compartment but the ladies there tell her that there isn't a bed available for her. Stressed, Laura stands in the corridor and lights up a cigarette. Even though she doesn't want to, Laura returns to her compartment sometime later and sees the guy sleeping. She gets into her bed and turns on her camera to watch some of her home videos. A smile appears on her face as she sees all of the people she loves and the fun times she has spent with them. The arrival to St. Petersburg the next morning is what makes Laura change her mind about going to Murmansk. She gathers her stuff quickly, being careful not to wake up the guy, and exits the train. She asks the lady at the station when the next train will be and she tells her that it will be in 1 hour. Laura decides to call Irina and she dials her number on the payphone. Irina is surprised to hear where she is and hopes that she hasn't changed her mind. Laura tells her that she will be going to Murmansk, but she saw a payphone and wanted to hear her voice. Different voices can be heard on the other line, and Laura realizes that Irina is with other people. Irina asks her how she likes her compartment mate and Laura tells her the truth. Disappointed by the call, Laura decides to head back to the train. When she gets to the compartment, she sees that a mother with 2 children had taken her place. The guy tells the little boy to get off the bed and Laura sets her stuff on it. The kids start crying and Laura decides to get out of the compartment. The guy follows her and asks whether she thinks he's a thief as she did take her bags with her, but she admits that she didn't plan to come back. Laura gets into the bathroom and the guy follows her there, asking why she changed her mind at the last minute. She has had enough of his intrusiveness as she closes and locks the door on him. Sadness, anger, and confusion fill Laura as she doesn't know what to do about her situation with Irina. She can't escape the nasty feeling as she looks through the small bathroom window to clear her head. After some time, she gathers herself and exits the bathroom. On the way there, the guy scares her by jumping out of nowhere. She has had enough of him as she ignores him, but he can't help but laugh at her reaction. Laura sits in the restaurant and orders some food. The guy doesn't stop following her as he sits at the table next to hers. He doesn't stop looking at her and after some time he starts talking to her. He tells her that she shouldn't be so serious all the time because she'll get wrinkles. Laura, annoyed, thanks him for the advice sarcastically and continues eating her food. He asks her why she's going to Murmansk and she tells him about the petroglyphs. Confused, he asks her to explain what petroglyphs are and she tells him that they're rock paintings. To better understand the wish to see the petroglyphs, he asks her what's so special about them, to which she replies that they're over 10,000 years old. The wise words from that one guy at the party come back to her, and she tells the guy that it is important to know the past as it helps understand the present. Even after the whole explanation, it's unbelievable to the guy that she's traveling far just to see some paintings on a rock. Annoyed, Laura asks him why he's traveling and he tells her that he is traveling for work. The guy works for GOK, which is a mining and processing company. He tries to explain to her what he does exactly but gives up once he can't find the words for it. He tells her that he works as a builder only to gather some money to open a bureau. Laura smiles as she doesn't believe that he is going to work in an office and asks what kind of business he'll be working in. He says that business is business before changing the theme and asking her whether she has a boyfriend. She lies and says that she does and he is a literature professor. A family interrupts their conversation as they ask to sit next to Laura. They talk to Laura and the guy decides to leave as she's not giving him any attention. After lunch, Laura comes back to the compartment and decides to make a video for Irina. She starts the video by addressing it to Irina, as she calls her my love. She tries to tell her from where she's recording, but there's no sign for her to see. The camera is pointed to the window, where Laura films the outside. She comments on what's going on outside but stops once she spots the guy from her compartment. After filming him for a while, she says that he's her neighbor and shows him where he sleeps. She wishes his bed was Irina's and she was there with her. She stops recording once the guy gets back and she laughs at him as he tries to get warmer. After a couple of hours, they pass by a village and Laura makes sure to record everything. The train that Laura's on stops in Petrozavodsk for one night, but she only finds out when her neighbor asks her what she'll be doing that night. She tells him that she doesn't plan on doing anything and will probably go to bed. The guy asks her to think about it and invites her to join him in visiting his friend. Laura thanks him for the offer and declines, but he tells her that his friend is old and she will like her as she already likes old things. They arrive in a city and Laura goes out for a smoke. The guy follows her and tries to change her mind but she doesn't budge. He tells her that the old lady has vodka, a Russian stove, and a cat. Laura rolls her eyes and asks whether she has a balalaika and the guy says that she doesn't. She laughs and tells him sarcastically that she won't be coming because the old lady doesn't have a balalaika, as she walks away from him. He wishes her a good night but she flips him off with her back to him. Laura tries to call Irina on a payphone but she doesn't even answer the call. A man waiting outside the payphone asks Laura to come out as she's not even talking to anyone. She tries to ignore him but he gets more persistent. The guy from her compartment pulls up in a random car, out of nowhere, and comes to see what the man wants from Laura. He tells him that she's not talking to anyone and he wants to use the phone, so Laura pretends to talk to Irina. Her neighbor tells the guy off and Laura hangs up the call. Disappointed and sad, Laura walks out and the guy asks her whether everything's alright. She pretends that it is and he asks her to go with him as that's her last chance. Laura agrees finally and they head on their road. The guy stops at a store to buy some alcohol and food, and when Laura asks him where they're going, he simply answers Yuri Gagarin. After driving for a while, they arrive at a small house that has a poster of Yuri Gagarin on it. They drive further down and the guy turns the car off. He gets out and Laura follows shortly. When she gets in the house, an old woman greets her and asks her to behave. A cat appears in front of Laura and that brings a smile to her face. They sit down to eat, and the old lady claims that she can count all of the people from Ireland, and with that, she'll prove that there's more population there than in China. The old lady is a witty woman as she only considers redheads as people, and that's why the population will be big in Ireland, as there are no redheads in China. They laugh about it as they take a shot of vodka. The old lady speaks again and says that women are very clever animals. There is a small animal in every woman, and she needs to learn how to control it. Trusting your inner self and not listening to anyone is the way of life for a woman, according to the old woman. She claims that she discovered her inner self when she was 15 and has lived happily with it for over 40 years. Laura pours more shots, and the lady suggests they cheer for her and her inner animal. The next morning comes and Laura wakes up confused. She rushes to get out of the house and even falls down the stairs. When she exits, she sees her neighbor chopping wood and he tells her that they need to leave soon. The lady hands Laura some sandwiches for the road and tells her that she has found a good man for herself. Laura agrees with her as she doesn't want to upset the lady. She says her goodbyes and hops into the car. The guy tries to start the car with the wires of it and Laura stares at him in disbelief. He asks her whether she thinks he's a bad guy and she tells him that all she has seen from him has been bad. They start their ride and Laura can't stop smiling as she finds herself enjoying his presence. When they arrive back on the train, the guy grabs a newspaper and reads it aloud. He tells Laura that a tourist has been kidnapped by the mafia in Murmansk, and she asks to see the paper. He doesn't let her as he strengthens his hold of the paper, so she jumps on him trying to get it. They have a play fight just like kids and laugh about it once they stop. Laura exits the compartment to grab some tea when she sees a passenger trying to get on the train, but he seems to have the wrong ticket, and doesn't speak Russian. She asks him whether he's from Finland and he tells her that he is. He needs to get out one stop before Murmansk, but doesn't think he has the right ticket. Laura tells him that he can stay in their compartment and they head their way. They get to the compartment and Laura's neighbor is not happy to see him. We learn the guy's name for the first time and it is Eljoa. He introduces himself to the Finnish guy, and he jokes that his name rhymes with aloha. Eljoa doesn't seem to like the guy as he gets a bad vibe from him immediately. Later on in the night, the Finnish guy is playing his guitar when Laura asks him whether he's been traveling for a long time. He tells her that he has traveled alone for a couple of months. Laura hesitates but asks him whether he feels alone, but he says that everyone's alone. He continues playing his guitar and Laura looks at Eljoa. She notices him glaring at the guy but doesn't say anything. Eljoa disappears for a while, and Laura sees him playing in the snow once the train stops. She watches him with a smile on her face and he ends up falling on the tracks. She decides to go out as well and the Finnish guy says that he will be joining her. Eljoa comes back to the train and Laura teases him, but he denies it and appears to be mad. Eljoa doesn't want to join them on their walk, so Laura and the Finnish guy leave without him. When they get off the train, a dog starts barking and motions for them to follow it. They follow the dog and it brings them to the shed where a couple of guys are sitting and drinking. They give them 2 bottles of alcohol as gifts and Laura thanks them before leaving. When they go back to the train, Laura goes to Eljoa and shows him the gifts, but he tells her off and even turns his back on him. She gets out of the compartment set but doesn't tell the Finnish guy what had happened. Laura can't seem to fall asleep, so she decides to draw Eljoa while he's sleeping. It is time for the Finnish guy to get off the train, and we see him and Laura smoking their last cigarette together. He leaves and she goes back to her compartment. Unfortunately, Laura can't find her camera and that breaks her heart. She searches everywhere, even at Eljoa's side, but doesn't find it. He wakes up and asks her what she's doing and she tells him that her camera is gone. After some searching, Laura realizes that the Finnish guy had stolen her camera and starts crying. After Laura calms down, Eljoa asks her what was on her camera. People, parties, gatherings, flats, and laughter were in Laura's tapes, the things that she loves. Eljoa asks about her boyfriend and she admits that she has a girlfriend named Irina, the most beautiful person she has ever met. They were supposed to go on the trip together, but she had work to do. That didn't stop Laura from going, but she admits that she doesn't know what made her. Irina's life in Laura's eyes is pure perfection. She admits that she had wanted to be a part of her life badly, but she realized that it will never happen. Eljoa asks her to describe Irina's flat to him and Laura talks about the old beautiful hardwood floors, high ceilings, beautiful wallpapers, and old furniture. She reminisces about the time when they would take long walks, their visits to the museum, the guests Irina would invite over, and how they would laugh and drink. Eljoa smiles and Laura tells him that she expected to miss Irina more, but only misses the way Irina would look at her. Eljoa puts out his cigarette and tells her that they should celebrate because they're close to Murmansk. Laura is confused as to how, and he tells her that they should go to the restaurant. They change their clothes and go to the restaurant. They try ordering fancy food, but the waiter tells them that they can only make sandwiches with cheese and ham as the kitchen is closing soon. The champagne is brought to their table and they have a toast before drinking. After taking a sip, Eljoa says that he doesn't want to drink champagne and he goes to the waiter himself. Laura watches him as he hands his watch to the waiter and he gives him a bottle of liqueur. Eljoa comes back with a smile on his face and before they drink, he suggests they toast in the name of the petroglyphs Laura wants to see. Before they take the next shot, Laura takes out her drawing of Eljoa and hands it to him. He looks at it but doesn't know what to say, so Laura suggests he draws her as she hands him the notebook. Eljoa starts drawing her but gives up after some time as he doesn't think the drawing is good, and he doesn't even let her see it. Laura rips a piece of paper from the notebook and asks him to write down his address so they can stay in contact. He tells her that there's no need for them to do that, but she tells him that they never know what could happen in the future. Eljoa takes the piece of paper and scrunches it in his hands, saying that it is a stupid idea. He quickly takes another shot and leaves Laura alone at the table as he exits the restaurant. She follows him to the compartment and hugs him once they are in. Tears fill Eljoa's eyes as they stand in the middle of the compartment, hugging for a few minutes. Laura takes his head in her hands and kisses him. He kisses back but breaks the kiss after a few seconds. He sits down and stares at the ground, not saying anything. Silence fills the compartment as both of them don't know what to say. Laura exits the compartment and walks down the corridor to grab some tea. The lady working there asks her whether everything's okay and Laura tells her that everything is perfect. She finds the compartment completely empty once she comes back, and she can't believe that he's gone. The train arrives in Murmansk the next morning, and Laura is woken up by the train attendant. She exits the train and catches the bus to get to the hotel. She hands her passport at the reception and they tell her that there isn't a room with her name. Laura remembers that Irina was supposed to come with her, so she asks them to check whether there's a room in Irina's name. They tell her there is but ask for Irina. Laura tells them that she isn't coming, and even though the receptionist is hesitant, they give her the room. After settling in her room, Lauren comes back to the reception to ask about the petroglyphs. They tell her that there is no way for her to get there in the winter and suggest coming back in the summer. Lauren tells them that she is sure that she can get there, but they don't listen to her. Instead, they offer her flyers with other places to visit. She goes to one of the places they had offered her but finds herself bored. Out the window, she sees taxis parked on the street and gets an idea. She goes to one of the cars and asks the driver whether he can be her tour guide, as she hands him the book about petroglyphs. Right when she thinks she's in luck, the driver tells her that it's too dangerous to go there. The taxi driver tells her the only way she can get there is by helicopter, so Laura thanks him and exits the vehicle. Back at the hotel, Laura calls Irina and she answers. Irina asks her whether she's seen the petroglyphs and Laura tells her that there's no way for her to see them. Uninterested in the conversation, Irina tells Laura that she has to hang up the call, so Laura says goodbye. She sits at dinner alone listening to music when an idea comes to her mind. She goes to GOK, where Eljo is working, and leaves a note to one of his coworkers when she doesn't find him there. In the middle of the night, she gets woken up by the phone ringing, and it's the receptionist telling her that someone is waiting for her in the lobby. Laura gets down and sees Eljoa. He tells her that they should get going, but she says that there's no way for them to get there. Eljoa calls everyone lazy and Laura smiles and says that she will get her coat. They get into the car and a driver takes them there. They can't stop looking at each other throughout the whole ride there, but both of them don't say anything. The car stops in front of a building and both of them get out. A group of men sits in one room and Eljoa asks for their help to get to the petroglyphs. One of the men sitting tells him that it is impossible to get to the sea in the conditions the weather is in. But Eljoa tells them that Laura has come all the way from Finland to see them. He promises them that money isn't a problem, and manages to convince them. Laura and Eljoa stay close to each other on the boat but don't say anything to each other. When they arrive there, they start walking to the petroglyphs, playing on the ice and in the snow. Spotting the big rocks with the petroglyphs, Laura stops and looks at Eljoa for a minute before running to see them, so he waits for her as he sits on a rock smoking his cigarette. Laura spends some time looking at the petroglyphs and admiring the beauty in front of her, and after some time she walks to Eljoa. He speaks to her for the first time after a while, and asks whether she has seen what she wanted to see. She tells him that she's finished and they head back. A snowstorm catches them on the way back, but they don't mind it as they play in the snow and have snowball fights like kids. They climb on an old washed-off boat and Eljoa jokes about them being on the Titanic. Laura returns the same energy, asking whether they're going to die like Jack and Rose, but Eljoa reminds her that Rose didn't die. After getting off the boat, they play in the snow and fall to the ground. Laying in the snow, they both start laughing without saying anything. The car takes them back and Laura falls asleep. When she wakes up, she finds no one in the car but sees Eljoa talking to the driver. He sees that Laura has woken up and looks at her for a few seconds. Their eyes meet and their looks are stuck on each other. The driver gets into the car and puts some music on. Laura starts smiling to herself as she remembers the time she spent with Eljoa. The driver hands her a paper from Eljoa and a smile forms on her face. It is a drawing of her from Eljoa, and on the back of it he has written "Hastavidu," which he thinks means "I love you." Laura starts smiling like crazy and finds herself laughing shortly after, as she knows her time spent with Eljoa will be a beautiful memory.